They may have dazzled audiences with charm, but off-screen they were ticking time bombs. Hollywood has always loved its shining stars, yet some of the brightest carried tempers that never cooled. From on-set explosions to public brawls, these celebrities seem powered by rage itself. What drives an actor to let fury rule their life? Stick around as we expose the stars who were always angry, and trust me, number 3 will make you question everything you thought you knew. Christian Bale. Christian Bale's temper was no secret once the world heard that infamous recording. In 2009, during the filming of Terminator Salvation, leaked audio captured Bale screaming at a crew member for walking across his eye line. The rant lasted nearly 4 minutes, complete with threats to trash equipment and lines that instantly went viral. Suddenly, Batman wasn't just the Dark Knight. He was Hollywood's angriest man. But this wasn't an isolated event. Just months earlier, Bale had been arrested in London after his mother and sister accused him of assault during a family fight. Though the charges were dropped, the headlines added fuel to his reputation. Bale's fury has often been linked to his method acting style. He's known for extreme physical transformations, starving himself for The Machinist and bulking up for The Dark Knight. To him, a disruption on set feels like sabotage of months of mental and physical preparation. Still, that volcanic energy is part of what makes him brilliant. The barely restrained rage in The Dark Knight, the manic volatility in The Fighter. These performances thrive on the same fire that causes his explosions. With Bale, the line between genius and meltdown is razor thin, and that's what makes him unforgettable. Edward Norton. Edward Norton didn't need screaming fits to terrify studios. His fury was quieter, but just as destructive. In 1998, while working on American History X, Norton allegedly hijacked the editing process, reshaping the film against director Tony Kaye's wishes. The fallout was ugly, complete with lawsuits and public feuding. Overnight, Norton went from brilliant actor to control-obsessed troublemaker. A decade later, the same storm brewed on The Incredible Hulk. Norton pushed for a deep, psychological exploration of Bruce Banner. Marvel, on the other hand, wanted big action and blockbuster fun. The arguments became legendary, with Norton reportedly rewriting scenes and clashing with executives. By 2010, Marvel made their move. Norton was out, Mark Ruffalo was in, and just like that, Norton lost a role in a billion-dollar franchise. What makes Norton's temper unique is that it isn't about volume, it's about suffocation. Colleagues described line-by-line arguments, endless script debates, and exhausting battles over camera angles. To some, it was perfectionism. To others, it was sabotage. Either way, his determination to control every detail strangled collaboration. The result, a career that flourished in indie cinema but fizzled in blockbusters. Norton's story proves you don't need to throw punches to burn bridges. Sometimes just gripping too tightly is enough. Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe didn't just argue, he fought. His reputation as Hollywood's brawler hit its peak in 2005 when he was arrested in New York. The reason? A hotel concierge refused to connect his international phone call. Crowe responded by hurling the phone into the man's face. The image of the Oscar-winning star in handcuffs plastered across tabloids shocked fans worldwide. But the phone incident was hardly a one-off. At the 2002 BAFTA Awards, Crowe allegedly threatened a producer who cut his acceptance speech. Stories of bar fights and drunken scuffles followed him across continents, each one adding to his legend as a storm in human form. Directors and co-stars learned quickly. Crowe's pride was volcanic, and the smallest slight could turn into a full-scale eruption. What makes it fascinating is how that same intensity powered his performances. As Maximus in Gladiator or Jim Braddock in Cinderella Man, you could feel the raw force he carried. Every glare, every strike, every roar seemed ripped straight from real life. Yet off-camera, it cost him endorsements, strained relationships, and a reputation that made studios nervous. Crowe's anger was never hidden. It was part of his brand, and that's what makes him the most shocking entry on this list. The warrior audiences adored on screen wasn't an act. It was the same fury he unleashed in hotel lobbies and award shows. Sean Penn. Sean Penn's anger became infamous in the 1980s, a time when paparazzi swarmed him and Madonna. his then wife. Unlike other stars who ignored flashing cameras, Penn went to war. In Macau, 1986, he spotted a photographer and attacked, leaving the man badly injured and sending Penn straight to jail. In Malibu, he smashed cameras, kicked reporters, and built his image as Hollywood's madman. But the rage wasn't confined to the press. Stories swirled of violent outbursts on set, with co-stars and directors caught in his storm. His marriage to Madonna was dogged by rumors of explosive fights, though she later denied the most extreme allegations. Still, the damage was done. Penn's temper became a permanent part of his legend. What set him apart was how confrontation seemed to fuel him. Where most avoided drama, Penn sought it out, meeting every provocation with fists or fury. Yet that same fire electrified his performances. His searing intensity in Mystic River earned him an Oscar. His raw conviction in Milk turned into critical acclaim. The audience saw truth, while insiders saw chaos. Penn never grew out of his rage. It became his signature, shaping both his artistry and his legacy. Watching him act always carried the same question. Was this performance, or was the man himself seconds away from another eruption? Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway was mesmerizing on screen, but off it she was a storm no one could control. Her role in Mommy Dearest became legendary for its unhinged energy, but crew members whispered that she wasn't acting. She was channeling her real self. Tantrums, screaming fits, objects thrown across the set. It was chaos from start to finish. Her need for domination was clear. Dunaway demanded complete authority on set, and if things didn't go her way, the explosions followed. She was eventually fired from Sunset Boulevard for verbally abusing cast and crew, a decision that shocked many but confirmed her reputation. Directors described her as both brilliant and unbearable, capable of delivering electric performances, but at the cost of everyone's sanity. The irony is that her fury gave her artistry its edge. Whether it was Network or Chinatown, Dunaway carried a sharpness that few could match. But that same sharpness cut deep into her career. By the 1990s, her reputation left her nearly unemployable, feared more than admired. Dunaway's story shows how anger can elevate a star and destroy them in equal measure. She burned bright, but she burned everyone around her too. In Hollywood, that kind of fire is unforgettable and unforgivable. Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase wasn't known for throwing punches. His weapon of choice was cruelty. On the set of Community, his clashes with creator Dan Harmon and his co-stars became infamous. At one point, in the middle of a heated rant, he shocked the cast and crew by using a racial slur to protest his dialogue. The fallout left scars that never fully healed. Unlike the volcanic outbursts of Crow or Penn, Chase's anger was calculated. Co-workers described him as dismissive, belittling, and cutting with words that cut deeper than fists. Once the golden boy of comedy, he seemed to carry resentment as his career declined. Instead of adapting to new comedic styles, he lashed out at those around him. But here's the twist. His bitterness wasn't new. Stories from his Saturday Night Live days paint him as arrogant, condescending, and ready to throw colleagues under the bus. His temper didn't fade with time, it curdled. By the 2000s, Chase's name was synonymous not with laughter, but with toxicity. His story is one of self-inflicted wounds. The man who once had Hollywood at his feet found himself largely isolated, undone not by failure, but by fury. Chase proved that anger doesn't have to be loud. It can be cold enough to freeze out your entire career. Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin's temper was legendary long before that infamous voicemail. In 2007, the world heard him leave a furious message for his daughter, calling her a rude, thoughtless little pig. The leak shocked fans, not because celebrities lose their cool, but because it stripped away Baldwin's charming exterior and exposed something darker. Baldwin's anger didn't stop there. From scuffles with paparazzi on New York streets to profanity-laced rants at airline staff, his outbursts became regular headlines. He seemed to live at the intersection of charisma and combustion, magnetic in public, explosive in private. Colleagues described him as unpredictable. One moment, the life of the party, the next, a seething powder keg. And yet, his temper also fueled his art. On the 30 Rock, his comedic timing thrived on the razor's edge of control and chaos. His presence on screen had the same volatility that made people wary of him off-screen. The duality is what makes Baldwin fascinating. He embodies the classic Hollywood split, the charming leading man audiences adore, and the unpredictable firebrand insiders fear. His anger has cost him endorsements, opportunities, and peace of mind. Still, it's also what makes him unforgettable. Baldwin is proof that some stars are fueled as much by fury as by talent. Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones didn't shout, smash, or brawl. His anger was colder, quieter, but just as brutal. Jim Carrey once shared a story about approaching Jones on the set of Batman Forever. Instead of pleasantries, Jones looked him dead in the eye and said, "I hate you. I really don't like you." Imagine hearing that from your co-star before shooting a scene together. Jones's fury isn't theatrical, it's rooted in disdain. He doesn't explode, he dismisses. His scowl at the Golden Globes went viral because it perfectly captured his essence. Absolute contempt for anything he considered foolish. That icy glare wasn't just a look, it was a message. On screen, that contempt transformed into unforgettable roles. Whether playing the no-nonsense sheriff in No Country for Old Men or the grizzled agent in Men in Black, Jones's simmering hostility gave his characters an edge no one could fake. Audiences loved it, but insiders knew the price. Jones's anger built walls around him. For many co-stars, those walls were impenetrable. You weren't going to get warmth or humor. You were going to get blunt honesty and often rejection. His legacy is proof that not all Hollywood tempers are loud. Some are so cold they freeze you out entirely. Klaus Kinski. Klaus Kinski wasn't just angry, he was terrifying. During the filming of Aguirre, The Wrath of God, when extras made too much noise, Kinski pulled out a gun and started shooting. One person was injured. Who does that? Only a man whose rage blurred the line between acting and reality. Director Werner Herzog famously admitted he once threatened Kinski with a gun just to keep him on set. Their collaborations became legendary for their madness, with Herzog describing Kinski as both a genius and a monster. Crew members spoke of constant fear, never knowing when Kinski would erupt into violence. What makes Kinski's story so disturbing is that his rage was inseparable from his artistry. His characters carried a raw, unfiltered madness that electrified the screen. Yet that same fury traumatized those around him. Genius and violence weren't separate forces in Kinski, they were the same thing. His legacy is complicated. Audiences still marvel at his performances, but those who worked with him remember the scars. Kinski represents the darkest side of Hollywood anger, when fury stops being a personality trait and becomes a danger to everyone nearby. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was one of Hollywood's brightest icons, but behind the glamour was a temper that chilled those around her. Known for her strict discipline, she reportedly ruled her home and her sets with an iron fist. Stories of violent outbursts and abusive behavior haunted her for decades, painting a portrait of a woman whose fury was never far from the surface. Her children described her as volatile, with punishments that were terrifying rather than corrective. On set, she could be just as brutal, unleashing tirades at co-stars or crew if things didn't meet her standards. Directors admired her professionalism, but many dreaded her presence. What makes Crawford's story unforgettable is the way her anger became part of her legend. In films like Mildred Pierce, her sharp intensity mirrored the same fire she carried off-screen. That precision made her performances magnetic, but also made her feared in real life. Over time, her reputation eclipsed her achievements. To some, she was a Hollywood queen. To others, she was a tyrant. Joan Crawford embodied both glamour and fury, and her legacy remains as complicated as her temper. She proved that even Hollywood royalty isn't immune to anger's destructive reach. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando wasn't just a revolutionary actor. He was a nightmare for directors. His temper made him one of the most difficult stars of his generation. On Mutiny on the Bounty in 1962, his clashes with the director and producers grew so intense that the film went millions over budget and nearly sank MGM. Brando refused to follow direction, rewrote dialogue on set, and exploded when challenged. Later, on Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola nearly lost his mind dealing with Brando's demands. He showed up overweight, unprepared, and hostile to everyone. Instead of reading the script, Brando wanted to improvise, resulting in constant battles. Coppola admitted the film's chaotic energy was largely thanks to Brando's stubborn fury. Psychologically, Brando's temper was tied to his disdain for authority. He hated being told what to do, even by directors he respected. That contempt carried into interviews where he mocked Hollywood itself, fueling his legend as both genius and troublemaker. Ironically, the same rage made him magnetic on screen. Whether playing Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire or Don Corleone in The Godfather, Brando's characters pulsed with raw power. But off-screen, his temper left wreckage in its wake. Brando proved that sometimes greatness and chaos are inseparable, and everyone around him paid the price. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf burst onto the scene as a young star, but his career quickly became defined by his anger-fueled antics. Arrests, public meltdowns, and violent altercations turned him into a Hollywood headline machine. In 2014, he was hauled off a Broadway production of Cabaret after heckling actors mid-performance, reportedly spitting and shouting obscenities before being dragged out by police. LaBeouf's outbursts didn't stop there. From bar fights to drunken rampages, his fury seemed unstoppable. During one infamous incident, he was caught on camera yelling at police officers, daring them to arrest him. Each blow-up chipped away at his once promising career, transforming him from blockbuster star to industry pariah. Yet there's another side to LaBeouf's story. His performances often carried the same volatility that fueled his real-life chaos. Films like Fury and Honey Boy showcased his ability to channel raw emotion into art. But the question always lingered. Was this brilliance or just unfiltered rage bleeding onto the screen? LaBeouf's journey is a modern cautionary tale. Anger may fuel artistry, but when it spills too far beyond the stage, it leaves careers in ruins. For Shia, the battle between talent and temper has always been a dangerous balancing act, and the world keeps watching to see which side wins. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan started as a beloved child star, but as her fame grew, so did her reputation for being volatile and difficult. By the mid-2000s, her on-set tantrums and public confrontations became gossip column gold. Directors complained of her storming off set, lashing out at crew, and refusing to cooperate when things didn't go her way. Her temper wasn't limited to Hollywood stages. Paparazzi frequently caught her in screaming matches outside clubs, sometimes pushing photographers out of the way or getting into physical altercations. Each incident painted a picture of a young star whose anger was always close to the surface. Producers who once banked on her name began backing away, unwilling to deal with her unpredictable mood swings. At one point, she was even warned that she'd be blacklisted from major studios if her behavior didn't change. Still, Lohan's story is layered with tragedy. Behind the chaos was a talented actress whose intensity lit up the screen in Mean Girls and The Parent Trap. But Hollywood is unforgiving, and her outburst made it easy for critics to dismiss her as unprofessional. Lohan's tale is one of wasted potential, proving that even a star's brightest spark can be dimmed by an uncontrolled temper. Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed wasn't just a great actor, he was a legendary brawler. Known for his heavy drinking, Reed's temper often exploded into violence, both on and off set. Stories of bar fights in London were endless, with Reed throwing punches at anyone who crossed him, whether it was a stranger or a co-star. One notorious incident happened during the filming of Gladiator. Castmates recalled Reed's explosive behavior during downtime fueled by alcohol and his refusal to be controlled. Earlier in his career, he'd been known to challenge fellow actors mid-production, turning filming into a war zone of egos and fists. Reed's volatility wasn't limited to fists, it was verbal too. He could reduce colleagues to silence with scathing insults, then storm off in fury. Directors tolerated him because his performances carried undeniable fire, but his unpredictability left scars on nearly every production. Despite his anger, Reed's legacy remains iconic. His raw, muscular presence on screen mirrored the chaos of his real life. He embodied characters who were as dangerous as they were magnetic. But behind the camera, his temper left broken relationships and bruises, both physical and professional. Reed was proof that sometimes Hollywood legends are built not just on talent, but on chaos. Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage may not have thrown punches in hotel lobbies, but his explosions were unforgettable. Known for his eccentric performances, Cage carried the same volatility off-screen. Neighbors recalled heated arguments, public meltdowns, and erratic outbursts that matched the manic energy of his roles. In 2011, he was arrested in New Orleans after allegedly screaming at his wife in the street and daring police officers to arrest him. Cage didn't stop there. His clashes with paparazzi often turned into shouting matches, caught on tape and replayed endlessly online. Fans started to wonder, was Cage always performing, or was this who he really was? What makes Cage unique is that his fury fed directly into his artistry. In films like Face Off and Mandy, his ability to swing from calm to unhinged in a heartbeat felt eerily authentic. Directors leaned into his unpredictability, knowing audiences couldn't look away. But while his anger gave him a cult following, it also cost him. Financial troubles and personal scandals left his career teetering, and his reputation for volatility scared off major studios. Still, Cage remains one of Hollywood's most fascinating enigmas, a man whose fury can sink him one day and make him iconic the next. With Cage, the chaos was always part of the package. So there you have it, the stars who turned rage into their calling card. Some exploded in hotel lobbies, others froze colleagues with contempt, and a few blurred the line between genius and madness. Which meltdown shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know who left you stunned. And if you enjoyed peeling back the Hollywood curtain, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and share this video. After all, behind every smile in Tinseltown, there's always a storm waiting to break.